I just had a bit of a problem with my internet connection. Welcome. If you've never been here before, this is just a quick 5 to 10 minute chat every Wednesday in Sydney here to help you learn how to sew with kids, or give you inspiration to sew with kids, or give you tips to sew with kids. So just a quick recap. The first week we just talked about, or at least I just talked about needles. I use these chenille needles, large eye, and a pointy, which makes it easy to sew. And then the following week I just spoke about threads, so you can use any thread you want. I use ordinary sewing thread, I use pearl cotton, and I use embroidery floss. So it doesn't matter what you use, just choose what's good for you or what you have on hand. So today I'm going to talk about threading needles with kids, which can be very frustrating, and these little wonderful things called needle threaders. I've just dropped my thread. So I'm going to talk first about needle threaders and then about getting kids to thread needles. And I've got some fun little surprise for you at the end of the live also. So the first needle threader I'm just going to show or talk about is this very old-fashioned needle threader. I don't know if you can see it, but there's this little wire here. I think you can sort of see it. So what's good about this needle threader is when you're threading needles, because it's a thin wire, it doesn't matter if you've got a really tiny, small eye, it still works. Problem with these little fellas is that they break really easy. And if you've got a class of kids pulling like mad to try to get their thread, their needle threader and thread through their needle, they can break. But they're all needle threaders work in more or less the same way. You thread the... I better put my glasses on. You push this little wire thing through the needle, and I'm going to get some thread, just bright red so you can see it. Then you just, oops-a-daisy. You thread your thread through that little wire, and then you pull through, and there you have your threaded needle, which is great when you've got a class of 30 kids all trying to thread their needles and it's not working. So needle threader number one, this little fella here with that very fine wire, which is great. Now the second sort of needle threader I'm going to show you is this metal needle threader. It has two little hooks depending on the size of the eye of your needle. So if you've got a smaller eye, you can use this one. A larger eye, you can use the big one. And it works in exactly the same way. You just get the kids to put the hook through the, let's see if I can do this. No, need my glasses. You get the kids to put the hook through the needle. Then they just wrap the thread into that little hook and pull it through, and again there you have your threaded needle. Now the champion of needle threaders might be this everyday little simple piece of paper here. Now this piece of paper is about 1 inch by 1/2 inch, which is folded and creased. This is the most amazing needle threader you can get. The only thing before you start threading your needle with it, you've just got to make sure that this piece of paper goes through the eye of your needle. Okay, so whatever the size of your eye, the paper has to fit through. And so how does this little champion work? Well, you get your kids to just open their piece of paper, they get their thread, put the thread, I'll just stand up, that might make it easy. That you can't see that. Put their thread in the paper, close the paper, and then thread it through the needle. Let's see if I can do this without my glasses. Look, I can even do this without my glasses. And there you go, you have a threaded needle. Now, there's actually an updated version to this little fella. You can just, let me see, snip the end off like that, So you have like this aeroplane looking thing, and then it's exactly the same thing. You just have that point there, which makes it easier to thread. Thread goes, oops, you're not seeing that very well. Thread goes in the paper, and that little point makes it easier to thread. And there we go. So this little plane here, whoops, which I've just dropped, might be the best needle threader you'll ever get. So that's needle threaders. Now, getting kids to thread their own needle is actually a really fun and really challenging experience for kids. That sort of feeling like, wow, I threaded my own needle is really amazing. So I'm going to show you different ways to get your kids to thread their own needles, but I've also got, this is the surprise, thank you to Yiska's Pencil Box, who has made this amazing certificate of sewing achievement, which you can give to your kid. It's like, as soon as they learn how to thread their own needles, they can get their own amazing certificate. Now, if you like the copy of the certificate, you'll just have to comment certificate on Not the Live on the post. Now, I don't have a bot that's going to do this automatically. I'll probably be doing it manually, so it might take a few hours for you to get your certificate. But thanks, Yiska's Pencil Box. I love the certificate. So if you do use the certificate with your kids in your class, let me know how it goes, because I think it's an amazing certificate. So how do you get kids to thread their needles? Well, easy way. So first of all, you've got your thread. And the one thing you've got to remember is these threads here, because they're got like made out of 6 strands, can get really fluffy and really difficult to thread. So the first thing you want a nice clean end to your thread. So there we go. Back in the old days, people used to lick and squish the end of the thread, and that just sort of flattened it down. Now, we don't do that anymore, but so if kids have got their thread, you don't want it too long, because if you're trying to thread your needle with this long sort of bit of thread, it's really soft and it doesn't really work very well. What you want to do is get the kids to hold the thread really, really short. So you've only got a teeny bit of thread there, and what you're going to do is, I'll see if I can do this without my glasses, is you're going to just get the kids to thread the needle like that. Oops, that worked. So I could do that. So some people say I'll just get back, you put when you've got that little end there, you put the needle onto the thread or the thread through the needle. So whichever way works is really good, but just having that tiny little bit of thread makes it much easier. And if after a few times it doesn't work, you've got to cut your thread again so you don't get rid of that fluffy end. And I would just like to squish it a little bit, just it makes it a bit flatter, so it's easier to thread. So I've just got some tips. Okay, one of the things when I have my classes, they're an hour and a half, and at the end of that hour and a half workshop, the kids have to be finished. So I always have some threaded needles ready, just in case for those last minute kids who are rushing to finish. So there's a threaded needle that I can just give them. Another thing is really interesting. When you're threading needles, it's good to have a piece of white paper on the table, because what happens is I don't know if you can see this, but if you have your needle against the white paper, it makes the eye much clearer. So that's just 2 tips. Also, I just wanted to thank Sunflower Designs, who last week when I was talking about how important it is to use good quality equipment like needles, pins, thread when you're sewing with kids, told me that some of the cheap needles have this really rough eye, which makes threading a needle even harder. So thanks Sunflower Design for that. Don't forget, if you have any comments, put them on the post, not the live, because I usually can't read them. So thank you for the tips. I find it really hard to read the small writing. But anyway, next week I'm going to be talking about pins and sewing clips. So if you have any questions about pins and sewing clips, let me know, or any other topics you'd like me to talk about. I'd love to hear them. So thank you very much. Don't forget, if you want this amazing certificate, just comment certificate on the post, not on the live, and I'll send you the link to this certificate. Thanks again. See you next week. Bye.